woman with no friends, people look at her and think she's weak or broken or somehow missing something. But they don't understand the kind of fire that grows in silence. They don't know what it feels like to battle life with no cheering crowd, no circle to clap for you, no hand to pull you up. See, when you walk alone long enough, you start hearing your own heartbeat louder than the noise around you. You start recognizing your own worth without needing anyone to stamp it. A woman with no friends isn't empty, she's unshaken. She's learning to trust her own voice in a world that keeps trying to drown it. She's standing in rooms where people doubt her, judge her, whisper about her, but she keeps moving because she's already survived the hardest thing, being alone with herself and finding strength there. So don't ever mistake her silence for weakness or her distance for loneliness. She's not waiting for approval, validation, or a crowd. She's building something stronger, a life where no one controls her path, her peace, or her power. And that kind of woman the world can't break. Solitude can sharpen identity and inner strength in ways that crowded rooms and constant company never can. When a woman spends time alone, without the noise of other people's opinions filling her ears, she begins to hear something far more important, her own truth. At first, being alone can feel like a shadow following her everywhere, quiet, unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But with time, that silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back who she really is underneath all the labels, expectations, and judgments the world places on her. While many people rely on the outside world to tell them who they should be, she learns to carve her identity from the inside out. Solitude becomes a space where she questions herself honestly, confronts her fears without distraction, and discovers strengths she didn't know she had. Most people fear being alone because it forces them to meet the parts of themselves they usually avoid. But a woman who walks with solitude has no choice but to face her own thoughts, memories, mistakes, dreams, and desires. Over time, this inner confrontation stops feeling like a burden and becomes a guide. She starts to understand why she reacts the way she does, what wounds still ache, what hopes still burn, and what kind of life she truly wants to build. Without the influence of friends or a social circle shaping her identity, she develops a clearer sense of self, pure, unfiltered, and strong. She isn't living to impress anyone, to fit in, or to match someone else's expectations. She begins living for herself, and that kind of identity can't be shaken easily. In solitude, her thoughts slow down enough for her to notice patterns. She sees which habits lift her up and which ones break her down. She starts to understand her emotional triggers, her inner strengths, and her hidden weaknesses. This level of self-awareness is something many people never reach because they hide behind company, conversation, and constant distraction. But she learns to stand still with her own mind, and it hardens her like steel. Identity shaped by solitude is not fragile. It's built on reflection, growth, and clarity. She gains a deeper understanding of her values, her worth, and what she refuses to tolerate. She stops apologizing for being herself because she finally knows who that self is. Solitude also teaches her resilience. Without friends to lean on, she must become her own support system. She learns to calm herself when she's overwhelmed, motivate herself when she feels stuck, and reassure herself when fear rises. This builds a foundation of inner strength that no external challenge can easily crumble. When a woman knows she can survive on her own, she no longer fears loss, rejection, or abandonment. She understands that pain won't destroy her because she has already grown through it alone. That sense of self-reliance becomes a powerful armor against the world's uncertainties. As solitude sharpens her identity, it also shapes her confidence. Her sense of worth stops depending on who supports her or who stays in her life. She realizes that she is enough on her own, and that revelation creates a quiet confidence that doesn't need to brag or display itself. It shows up in her decisions, her boundaries, her walk, and her voice. She becomes less affected by gossip, criticism, or people's opinions because she knows herself too well to be shaken by assumptions. She no longer chases approval. She respects herself too much to do that. In the end, solitude becomes her teacher, her mirror, and her strength. It shapes not just who she is, but who she is becoming, someone grounded, unbreakable, and deeply connected to her own truth. A woman with no friends often learns loyalty, truth, and self-respect the hard way because her life naturally becomes a place where people's actions reveal their true intentions with painful clarity. When she doesn't have a circle around her, she becomes more attentive to how others treat her, noticing every small act of kindness, every inconsistency, every betrayal. She sees the world without the filter of friendships that might otherwise cushion or soften the blows. This kind of raw experience teaches her lessons that many people never learn until much later in life. Loyalty stops being a casual word for her. It becomes something she studies through contrast, through moments when others were not loyal to her, when she stood alone, even though she never would have left someone else in the same situation. From these experiences, she starts to understand the true value of loyalty, both in others and in herself, because she has fewer distractions and fewer people around her. She becomes more sensitive to truth, not just spoken truth, but emotional truth, behavioral truth, and the truth of people's intentions. When someone lies to her, the emptiness around her makes the lie feel louder. When someone pretends to care but fails to show up when she needs them, the truth becomes undeniable. Without a group of friends defending or excusing others' behavior, she must face reality directly. This gives her a deeper understanding of human nature. She becomes better at reading people, recognizing patterns, and understanding the difference between someone's words and their actions. This makes her wiser, more grounded, and far less likely to fall for manipulation or empty promises. Through these lessons, she becomes someone who values honesty not because it is convenient, but because she has felt the sting of lies and the weight of betrayal. Her journey also teaches her something even more important: self-respect. When a woman has no friends, she is forced to set boundaries for herself because there is no one else to protect her from draining situations or unhealthy relationships. She becomes the guardian of her own peace. Over time, she learns what she will accept and what she won't. She realizes that some people only come around when they need something, and she learns to say no. She sees which interactions leave her feeling small or unappreciated, and she starts to walk away from them. Through these experiences, self-respect stops being an idea and becomes a survival tool. She understands that treating herself with dignity is not optional, it is necessary. She learns to choose herself even when no one else chooses her, and this mindset becomes part of her identity. A woman who goes through life without a support system also learns to differentiate between loneliness and self-worth. At first, she may feel lonely and assume something is wrong with her, but as she grows, she begins to see that being alone is not a reflection of her value, but a stage that is shaping her into someone stronger and more selective. She starts to realize that not everyone deserves access to her heart, her time, or her energy. She becomes more careful about who she lets close because she has experienced the consequences of trusting the wrong people. Each lesson of disappointment becomes a brick in the wall of her self-respect. Each moment of being taken for granted, it becomes a reminder of her worth. Slowly, she develops a sense of pride in herself, not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet certainty that she deserves better than what she has accepted in the past. Through all of this, she builds a deeper understanding of loyalty, truth, and self-respect, not from books or advice, but from experience. Her life teaches her that being loyal doesn't mean allowing people to walk over her. It teaches her that truth is sometimes painful, but always necessary. Above all, it teaches her that respecting herself is the foundation of every relationship she will ever have, including the relationship she has with her own heart. Isolation can become the birthplace of confidence and self-power because it forces a woman to rely on parts of herself she may have never accessed in the comfort of companionship. When she stands alone, she doesn't have the safety net of friends to fall back on, no whispered encouragement to push her forward, no familiar voices telling her she's doing the right thing. Instead, the only voice she hears is her own, and at first, that can feel frightening or unfamiliar. But with time, that same voice grows louder, steadier, and more certain. Isolation becomes the environment where she learns how strong she actually is, not in comparison to others, but in the quiet truth of her own resilience. When a woman spends time in isolation, the emotions she experiences hit deeper. Fear feels heavier, doubt feels sharper, and insecurity feels closer than ever. But because she has no choice but to sit with these feelings, she also becomes skilled at handling them. She learns to self-soothe when anxiety tries to overwhelm her. She learns to talk herself through difficult moments. And she learns to recognize the difference between temporary emotional storms and genuine danger. Little by little, she starts to trust her own instincts. She sees that she can make decisions and survive their outcomes. She learns that she can calm her own nervous system without needing someone else to reassure her. This self-regulation becomes the foundation of her confidence because she realizes she is capable of navigating life even when she stands alone. Isolation also pushes her to develop emotional independence. Many people depend on social circles to validate their decisions, their emotions, and their identity. But a woman with no friends has to create that validation from within. She becomes her own motivator, her own comforter, her own reminder that she is worthy. At first, this feels like a burden, but eventually it becomes a strength. She starts recognizing her progress, acknowledging her victories, and forgiving her mistakes without needing an audience. This internal support system becomes the core of her power. It's not loud or boastful, but a steady, unshakable sense of inner stability that grows with each challenge she faces alone. Isolation also gives her something incredibly rare: clarity. Without the noise of constant social interaction, she can hear her thoughts more clearly and see her life more honestly. She can identify what truly matters to her without being influenced by others' opinions. She understands her dreams without outside pressure. She sees her weaknesses without judgment and her strengths without arrogance. This clarity allows her to set meaningful goals, make stronger decisions, and create a future based on her own desires rather than the expectations of others. Confidence grows naturally when she knows exactly who she is and what she wants. One of the most powerful shifts that occurs in isolation is the understanding that her worth is not tied to her relationships. When a woman realizes she can be alone without feeling empty, she becomes untouchable in a way that scares people who rely on the world for validation. She stops chasing people who don't value her. She stops begging for attention, approval, or affection. She becomes selective not because she is cold, but because she has learned to value her peace. This kind of self-power cannot be taken away by rejection, gossip, or abandonment. It is built from within and strengthened by every moment she spends learning to stand on her own 2 feet. As she grows more comfortable in her solitude, she begins to notice small but powerful changes in herself. She speaks with more certainty because her words come from lived experience, not borrowed opinions. She carries herself differently because she no longer needs anyone to validate her existence. She walks into rooms with a quiet strength that makes people curious or even intimidated, not because she tries to impress them, but because she has become grounded in her own truth. This confidence is born from isolation, shaped by reflection, and strengthened through resilience. In this process, isolation transforms from something she feared into something she respects. It becomes the place where she rebuilds herself, where she finds her true voice, and where she discovers power she never imagined she possessed. The world fears a woman who finds peace within herself because she becomes someone who cannot be controlled, manipulated, or shaken by the chaos around her. Most people draw their sense of self from the approval of others, from relationships, social circles, and outside noise. But when a woman discovers peace inside her own soul, she breaks away from that cycle. She no longer depends on the world to make her feel whole, and that kind of independence makes others uncomfortable. People who rely on keeping her insecure lose their influence. People who expect her to bend or shrink to fit their expectations suddenly realize she no longer needs their permission to exist. A woman who finds her inner peace becomes someone the world cannot predict, and people often fear what they cannot control. When a woman reaches a point where she's not battling with her own mind, she begins to see life with clarity. She doesn't get caught up in unnecessary drama because she knows her peace is more valuable than winning an argument. She doesn't entertain toxic behavior because she understands that her emotional stability is worth more than temporary companionship. She becomes careful about who she lets near her, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. And this wisdom makes her powerful in a quiet, unshakable way. Others may try to provoke her, but she doesn't react with the same intensity. She doesn't need to prove herself or fight for recognition. Her peace teaches her to choose her battles, and those choices come from strength, not weakness. A woman who finds peace within herself learns that validation is not something to seek, it's something she gives herself. This is where the world begins to shift around her. People who once felt superior lose their hold. Those who tried to belittle her or make her doubt herself realize their words no longer have the same effect. She becomes centered, grounded, and impossible to manipulate emotionally. This scares people who benefit from her insecurities. But instead of shrinking back into old patterns, she stands taller because her peace is rooted in self-awareness. She knows who she is, what she wants, and what she refuses to tolerate. That kind of clarity is intimidating in a society that thrives on confusion and self-doubt. When she finds peace, she stops chasing things that aren't meant for her. She stops begging for love, attention, or acceptance. She understands that what is meant for her will never require her to sacrifice her dignity or question her worth. This shift changes every relationship she has. She no longer entertains people who drain her. She doesn't settle for half love or one-sided effort. She doesn't cling to situations that disturb her peace. Instead, she walks away with a calm confidence that unsettles people who expected her to break. The peace inside her becomes her compass, guiding her decisions and shaping her future. And because she listens to it, she grows stronger without needing to announce her strength. A peaceful woman is often misunderstood because the world expects women to be overwhelmed, emotional, or easily influenced. When she chooses stillness over chaos, some may mistake her for being cold or distant, but her calm is not a lack of feeling. It's a mastery of herself. She has learned how to process her emotions instead of being ruled by them. She has learned to protect her energy instead of giving it away carelessly. I believe she has learned to let silence speak for her when noise no longer serves her. This level of control over her inner world is intimidating because it reveals what others lack within themselves. What truly worries the world is that a woman with inner peace cannot be used. She cannot be guilt-tripped into staying in places that hurt her. She cannot be pressured into becoming someone she is not. She cannot be broken by rejection because she no longer views loneliness as a threat. She has already learned how to stand alone without losing herself. And because of this, she becomes untouchable in the most powerful way. Her peace shields her from negativity, her self-awareness empowers her decisions, and her quiet strength becomes a force that others feel even before she speaks. Walking alone teaches lessons that crowds will never understand because solitude creates a kind of clarity that only appears when a woman listens to her own footsteps instead of the noise surrounding her. When she moves through life without a group, she becomes more observant, more intuitive, and more aware of the world in ways people who rely on constant company never experience. She notices details that others overlook. She hears the tone behind someone's words, sees the intentions behind someone's actions, and feels the energy in a room before she even speaks. Walking alone sharpens her senses because she doesn't have the comfort of distraction. She must face the world directly with open eyes and an open mind. Each step she takes becomes a lesson on how to navigate life with independence and strength. People who walk in crowds often adopt the mentality of the group. They blend in, follow along, and absorb other people's fears, opinions, and insecurities without realizing it. But a woman walking alone thinks for herself. She questions things that others accept. She sees patterns that others ignore. She understands that not every path is worth walking, and not every person is worth trusting. Her thinking becomes clearer because she does not have the voices of others influencing her direction. This self-guided journey teaches her how to trust her instincts, make decisions without hesitation, and accept responsibility for her choices. Every mistake she makes becomes her own teacher, and every victory becomes her own achievement. This personal accountability builds wisdom that people surrounded by constant support may never develop. Walking alone also teaches her patience. She learns to move at her own pace without being rushed by expectations or slowed down by people who are not aligned with her goals. She begins to understand that progress is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it is quiet, internal, and steady. She doesn't compare her journey to others because she knows her path is unique. This patience becomes strength. While others feel pressure to fit into timelines set by society or their friends, she becomes comfortable with her own rhythm. She learns that growth cannot be forced and healing cannot be hurried. She understands that every step forward matters, even if no one else sees it happening. Another lesson she learns is emotional resilience. When she walks alone, she faces challenges without a support system to catch her. She must confront fear by herself, deal with disappointment on her own, and rebuild after setbacks without someone cheering her on. These moments feel heavy at first, but over time, they sculpt her into someone who can handle life with dignity and courage. She learns to get back up even when no one notices she fell. She learns to comfort herself without relying on others for reassurance. She learns to stay calm in situations where others would panic. This emotional resilience becomes her inner armor, allowing her to stand strong even in the face of uncertainty. Walking alone also teaches her the difference between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness is the ache of missing someone. Solitude is the freedom of finding yourself. As she grows more comfortable being alone, she realizes that her own company is not something to fear, it is something to value. She discovers that being alone does not mean being unloved or unwanted. Instead, it gives her space to think, breathe, and evolve. She begins to enjoy her own presence, to appreciate her own thoughts, and to respect her own needs. This shift in mindset makes her powerful because she no longer clings to people out of fear of being alone. She forms bonds out of choice, not desperation. She walks away from toxic situations without hesitation because she knows she can stand on her own. People who walk in crowds often fear solitude, but she learns to embrace it. Walking alone becomes her teacher, shaping her into someone grounded, wise, and self-assured. She learns how to navigate life with inner strength rather than external support. She becomes the kind of woman who understands herself deeply, trusts her journey, and follows her intuition even when the path is unclear. These lessons cannot be taught by others. They must be lived, step by solitary step, until she becomes a force shaped by silence, resilience, and the undeniable power of walking alone.